might be meteorites, except for a few points. One way to be sure was to try to plot the flight path of the green fireballs, the same way he had so successfully plotted the flight path of meteorites in the past. From this flight path he could determine where they would have hit the Earth, if they were meteorites. They would search this area, and if they found parts of a meteorite, they would have the answer to the green fireball riddle. The fireball activity on the night of December 5th was made to order for plotting flight paths. The good reports of that night included carefully noted locations, the directions in which the green objects were seen, their heights above the horizon, and the times when they were observed. So, early the next morning, Dr. La Paz and a crew of intelligence officers were scouring northern New Mexico. They started out by talking to the people who had made reports, but soon found out that dozens of other people had also seen the fireballs. By closely checking the time of the observations, they determined that 8 separate fireballs had been seen. One was evidently more spectacular and was seen by the most people. Everyone in northern New Mexico had seen it going from west to east, so Dr. La Paz and his crew worked eastward across New Mexico to the west border of Texas, talking to dozens of people. After many sleepless hours, they finally plotted where it should have struck the Earth. They searched the area but found nothing. They went back over the area time and time again. Nothing. As Dr. La Paz later told me, this was the first time that he seriously doubted the green fireballs were meteorites. Within a few more days, the fireballs were appearing almost nightly. The intelligence officers from Kirtland decided that maybe they could get a good look at one of them, so on the night of December 8th, 2 officers took off in an airplane just before dark and began to cruise around north of Albuquerque. They had a carefully worked out plan where each man would observe certain details if they saw one of the green fireballs. At 6:33 p.m. they saw one. This is their report. Flying at an indicated altitude of 11,500 feet, a strange phenomenon was observed. Exact position of the aircraft at time of the observation was 20 miles east of Las Vegas, New Mexico, radio range station. The aircraft was on a compass course of 90 degrees. Captain X was pilot and I was acting as co-pilot. I first observed the object and a split second later the pilot saw it. It was 2,000 feet higher than the plane and was approaching the plane at a rapid rate of speed from 30 degrees to the left of our course. The object was similar in appearance to a burning green flare, the kind that is commonly used in the Air Force. However, the light was much more intense, and the object appeared considerably larger than a normal flare. The trajectory of the object, when first sighted, was almost flat and parallel to the Earth. The phenomenon lasted about 2 seconds. At the end of this time, the object seemed to begin to burn out, and the trajectory then dropped off rapidly. The phenomenon was of such intensity as to be visible from the very moment it ignited. Back at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, ATIC was getting a blow-by-blow account of the fireball activity, but they were taking no direct part in the investigation. Their main interest was to review all incoming UFO reports and see if the green fireball reports were actually unique to the Albuquerque area. They were. Although a good many UFO reports were coming in from other parts of the U.S., none fit the description of the green fireballs. All during December 1948 and January 1949, the green fireballs continued to invade the New Mexico skies. Everyone, including the intelligence officers at Kirtland Air Force Base, Air Defense Command people, Dr. La Paz, and some of the most distinguished scientists at Los Alamos had seen at least one. In mid-February 1949, a conference was called at Los Alamos to determine what should be done to further pursue the investigation. The Air Force, Project Sign, the intelligence people at Kirtland, and other interested parties had done everything they could think of, and still no answer. Such notable scientists as Dr. Joseph Kaplan, a world-renowned authority on the physics of the upper atmosphere, Dr. Edward Teller of H-bomb fame, and of course Dr. La Paz attended, along with a lot of military brass and scientists from Los Alamos. This was one conference where there was no need to discuss whether or not this special type of UFO, the green fireball, existed. Almost everyone at the meeting had seen one. The purpose of the conference was to decide whether the fireballs were natural or man-made, and how to find out more about them. As happens in any conference, opinions were divided. Some people thought the green fireballs were natural fireballs. The proponents of the natural meteor or meteorite theory presented facts that they had dug out of astronomical journals. Greenish-colored meteors, although not common, had been observed on many occasions. The flat trajectory, which seemed to be so important in proving that the green fireballs were extraterrestrial, was also nothing new. When viewed from certain angles, a meteor can appear to have a flat trajectory. The reason that so many had been seen during December of 1948 and January of 1949 was that the weather had been unusually clear all over the Southwest during this period. Dr. La Paz led the group who believed that the green fireballs were not meteors or meteorites. His argument was derived from the facts that he had gained after many days of research and working with Air Force intelligence teams. He stuck to the points that 1. The trajectory was too flat, 2. The color was too green, and 3. He couldn't locate any fragments, even though he had found the spots where they should have hit the Earth if they were meteorites. People who were at that meeting have told me that Dr. La Paz's theory was very interesting and that each point was carefully considered. But evidently it wasn't conclusive enough, because when the conference broke up after 2 days, it was decided that the green fireballs were a natural phenomenon of some kind. It was recommended that this phase of the UFO investigation be given to the Air Force's Cambridge Research Laboratory, since it is the function of this group to study natural phenomena, and that Cambridge set up a project to attempt to photograph the green fireballs and measure their speed, altitude, and size. In the late summer of 1949, Cambridge established Project Twinkle to solve the mystery. The project called for establishing 3 cinetheodolite stations near White Sands, New Mexico. A cinetheodolite is similar to a 35mm movie camera, except when you take a photograph of an object, you also get a photograph of 3 dials that show the time the photo was taken, the azimuth angle, and the elevation angle of the camera. If 2 or more cameras photograph the same object, it is possible to obtain a very accurate measurement of the photographed object's altitude, speed, and size. Project Twinkle was a bust. Absolutely nothing was photographed. Of the 3 cameras that were planned for the project, only 1 was available. This 1 camera was continually being moved from place to place. If several reports came from a certain area, the camera crew would load up their equipment and move to that area, always arriving too late. Any duck hunter can tell you that this is the wrong tactic. If you want to shoot any ducks, pick a good place and stay put. Let the ducks come to you. The people trying to operate projects were trouble. To do a good job, they needed more and better equipment and more people. But Air Force budget cuts precluded this. Moral support was free, but they didn't get this either. When the Korean War started, Project Twinkle silently died, along with official interest in green fireballs. When I organized Project Blue Book in the summer of 1951, I'd never heard of a green fireball. We had a few files marked Los Alamos Conference, Fireballs, Project Twinkle, etc., but I didn't pay any attention to them. Then one day I was at a meeting in Los Angeles with several other officers from ATIC and was introduced to Dr. Joseph Kaplan. When he found we were from ATIC, his first question was, "Whatever happened to the green fireballs?" None of us had ever heard of them, so he quickly gave us the story. He and I ended up discussing green fireballs. He mentioned Dr. La Paz and his opinion that the green fireballs might be man-made, and although he respected La Paz's professional ability, he just wasn't convinced. But he did strongly urge me to get in touch with Dr. La Paz and hear his side of the story. When I returned to ATIC, I spent several days digging into our collection of green fireball reports. All of these reports covered a period from early December 1948 to 1949. As far as Blue Book's files were concerned, there hadn't been a green fireball report for a year and a half. I read over the report on Project Twinkle and the few notes we had on the Los Alamos Conference, and decided that the next time I went to Albuquerque, I'd contact Dr. La Paz. I did go to Albuquerque several times, but my visits were always short and I was always in a hurry, so I didn't get to see him. It was 6 or 8 months later before the subject of green fireballs came up again. I was eating lunch with a group of people at the AEC's Los Alamos laboratory when one of the group mentioned the mysterious Kelly green balls of fire. The strictly unofficial bull session type discussion that followed took up the entire lunch hour and several hours of the afternoon. It was an interesting discussion because these people, all scientists and technicians from the lab, had a few educated guesses as to what they might be. All of them had seen a green fireball, some of them had seen several. One of the men, a private pilot, had encountered a fireball one night while he was flying his Navion north of Santa Fe, and he had a vivid way of explaining what he'd seen. "Take a soft ball and paint it with some kind of fluorescent paint that will glow a bright green in the dark," I remember his saying. "Then have someone take the ball out about 100 feet in front of you and about 10 feet above you. Have him throw the ball right at your face as hard as he can throw it. That's what a green fireball looks like." The speculation about what the green fireballs were ran through the usual spectrum of answers: a new type of natural phenomenon, a secret U.S. development, and psychologically enlarged meteors. When the possibility of the green fireballs being associated with interplanetary vehicles came up, the whole group got serious. They had been doing a lot of thinking about this, they said, and they had a theory. The green fireballs, they theorized, could be some type of unmanned test vehicle that was being projected into our atmosphere from a spaceship hovering several hundred miles above the Earth. 2 years ago, I would have been amazed to hear a group of reputable scientists make such a startling statement. Now, however, I took it as a matter of course. I'd heard the same type of statement many times before from equally qualified groups. Turn the tables, they said,